I am Homo sapiens. The Permian period was the final period of the Paleozoic era in Earth's geological timescale, beginning around 299 million years ago and ending about 251 million years ago. This period witnessed significant geological, climatic, and biological changes. It was a time of evolution for the ancestors of reptiles and mammals, and there was a widespread proliferation of plants like gymnosperms. However, the most revolutionary change in the history of life during this period was the increasing diversity of amniotes. These creatures had developed by the end of the Carboniferous period, which was discussed in the previous video. The success of terrestrial vertebrates on Earth during the Carboniferous and Permian periods can be attributed to their amniotic eggs, which will be discussed in detail in the video. After the evolution of creatures like Hylonomus, it was now time for the evolution of creatures like Archaeothrys, which were pelycosaurs and are the true ancestors of all mammals, including humans, that were not reptiles. It was during this period that today's mammals and reptiles began to evolve separately. As in some of the previous parts of this series, we will discuss this period in 5 sections. 1. Plate tectonics and climate. 2. Marine life during the Permian period. 3. Plants and the plant kingdom. 4. Terrestrial animals of the Permian period. 5. The Permian-Triassic extinction. And finally, a special discussion, a detailed evolutionary analysis of amniotes, which is deeply related to the evolution of humans and reptiles. Plate tectonics and climate. By the middle of the Permian period, the formation of the supercontinent Pangaea was complete. This massive landmass influenced the climate, making the interior regions more arid and harsh, with consistently high temperatures, while coastal areas experienced humid conditions. Changes in ocean currents and a drop in sea levels also contributed to climate change. During the Permian period, CO2 levels in the atmosphere were high, while oxygen levels significantly dropped by the end of the period, posing a critical threat to the survival of life. The extreme rise in temperatures negatively impacted biodiversity. Oceans became oxygen-depleted, leading to mass extinctions of marine life. Additionally, near the end of the Permian period, around 252 million years ago, a massive volcanic event occurred, known as the Siberian Traps. This volcanic activity spanned an area of about 2 million square kilometers in present-day Siberia. During this event, a large amount of lava and toxic gases, such as carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, were released into the atmosphere, causing severe climate changes. Marine life during the Permian period. The Permian period saw significant changes in marine ecosystems. By this time, the oceans hosted a variety of life forms, some of which had evolved early in the Paleozoic era, while others emerged during the Permian period. Bryozoans were small, colony-forming organisms that attached themselves to rocks and other hard surfaces. They were filter feeders, obtaining food from plankton. Brachiopods were marine organisms with bilateral symmetry, whose shells were divided into 2 parts, one on top and one on the bottom. They were also filter feeders and were found on the ocean floor. By the end of the period, many genera of brachiopods had become extinct, although some continued to survive. Ammonoids were marine mollusks with spiral-shaped shells. They were known as aquatic predators and had complex shell structures. Ammonoids suffered heavy losses during the Permian-Triassic extinction event, with most of their species going extinct. Gastropods were single-shelled mollusks, the ancestors of today's snails and slugs. They lived on the ocean floor and were either herbivores or omnivores. Crinoids were marine echinoderms with long, stem-like structures that anchored them to the seafloor. They were also known as sea lilies. By the end of the period, most crinoid species had become extinct. Trilobites were present in small numbers in the marine life of the Permian period, though they went extinct by the end of this period. They were marine arthropods with a 3-lobed body structure. The Permian-Triassic extinction event completely wiped out trilobites. Sponges were widespread on the seafloor during the Permian period, although large marine sponge reefs had already disappeared by the end of the Devonian period. These simple organisms filtered water to obtain food, but their numbers also saw a significant decline by the end of the period. Plants and the plant kingdom. The Permian period saw significant evolutionary changes in plant life. By this time, gymnosperms such as conifers and cycads began to emerge, which were well-suited to drier conditions. Early in the period, fern-like plants like Glossopteris were widespread, but towards the end of the period, these began to decline due to increasing arid conditions. Glossopteris plants, a genus of gymnosperms, were widely found in the southern hemisphere. They had large, oval-shaped leaves. The genus Tortoise was also a gymnosperm, found in both tree and shrub forms, with cone-shaped seeds. The genus Voltsia was an early gymnosperm conifer with cone-like seeds. Plants of the genus Pseudoctenes were dominant cycads of the Permian period, with frond-like leaves. These plants were adapted to arid conditions. The genus Taeniopteris included early cycads with long, narrow leaves, which grew in swampy and moist areas. The genus Pacopteris was a distinctive fern of this period, with broad and narrow leaves, mainly growing in marshy regions. Sphenophyllum was a small, shrub-like plant with leaves arranged in a spiral pattern. The genus Lepidodendron was a giant, tree-like lycopod mainly found in the Carboniferous period and early Permian period. The genus Sigillaria was also a large lycopod with a tall, straight trunk and small leaves. Terrestrial life of the Permian period. The Permian period witnessed significant diversity among terrestrial animals. Reptiles saw considerable development during this time, leading to the eventual rise of dinosaurs. Early synapsid ancestors of mammals also roamed the land, alongside newly evolved amphibians. Therapsids were the dominant terrestrial animals of the Permian period, with some evolving into the ancestors of mammals. Dicynodon was one of the most advanced forms of therapsids, a non-mammalian herbivorous therapsid. Gorgonops was a carnivorous therapsid with long, sharp teeth, making it the apex predator of its time. Dimetrodon was the most famous pelycosaur, distinguished by a large sail-like structure on its back, likely used for thermoregulation. It was an ancient ancestor of mammals. Edaphosaurus was another herbivorous pelycosaur with a sail-like structure on its back. Captorhinus was an early reptile known for its particularly strong jaws, making it a small to medium-sized predator. Periosaurus was a large, herbivorous reptile with thick, textured skin. Protorethyrus was an early and primitive true reptile that preyed on small insects and other tiny creatures. Scutosaurus were large, armored herbivores known for their heavy bodies and dense, rough skin. They are considered early ancestors of modern turtles. Procolophon was a small herbivorous reptile found towards the end of the Permian period. Petrolicosaurus was classified as a true reptile, with a long tail and a slender body adapted for agile movement. Yanina was a small, lizard-like early diapsid capable of climbing trees and feeding on insects. Milleretta was a small, arboreal true reptile resembling early sauropsids. Ariops was a large amphibian that lived in muddy and swampy areas. It had strong jaws with sharp teeth, making it an effective predator. Diplocaulus was an unusual-looking amphibian with a boomerang-shaped head, typically found in small ponds and rivers. During the Permian period, climate changes and the emergence of massive landmasses led to the evolution of new arthropods, with many new groups emerging and diversifying, including insects and spiders. Mecoptera, which belong to the group of scorpion flies, were present during this period and are considered ancestors of many modern insect groups. Coleoptera, the ancient group of beetles, was present at that time and remains one of the most diverse insect groups worldwide. Ancestors of grasshopper-like insects from the Orthoptera group began to appear in this period. Arachnids, including spiders and scorpions, also evolved rapidly. New species like trigonotarbids, an ancient spider-like organism, were present, alongside the early development of true spiders araneae. Early cockroaches from the Blatodia group were common and thrived by feeding on plant leaves and decaying wood during this time. Permian-Triassic extinction event. The extinction event at the end of the Permian period is considered the most catastrophic extinction event in Earth's history, with around 96% of marine life and 70% of terrestrial life going extinct. The main causes of this event include volcanic eruptions in the Siberian traps, oceanic oxygen depletion, and the release of methane hydrates. The massive volcanic eruptions in the Siberian traps released large amounts of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, which led to a rise in Earth's temperature and ocean acidification, causing a depletion of oxygen in the oceans. Global warming further disrupted marine ecosystems, increasing mortality rates among both marine and terrestrial organisms. An evolutionary analysis of amniotes. The evolution of reptiles and mammals is a fascinating topic. At the end of the Devonian period, the first tetrapods, meaning vertebrates with four limbs, evolved, which could move from water to land. These tetrapods evolved from ray-fin fishes, which have been discussed in detail in a previous video. Some of these terrestrial tetrapods began to lay eggs with hard shells on land and were known as amniotes, which evolved during the Carboniferous period. Amniotes include reptiles, birds, and mammals. The development of the amniotic egg allowed early tetrapods to break free from their dependency on water for reproduction, a dependency that still exists in amphibians today. These tetrapods moved further towards becoming fully terrestrial animals. Pedipalps is an important tetrapod that represents a transitional form between the Devonian and Carboniferous periods, but it was not a direct ancestor of amniotes. The common ancestor of amniotes is considered to be a primitive amniote rather than a specifically named species or individual. There are a few potential candidates and groups. 1. Cassinaria, a small, lizard-like creature that might be closely related to early amniotes, showing features like legs with toes adapted for walking on land. 2. Hylonomus, the first known amniote. 3. Westlothiana, known as the closest relative to modern lizards, though technically not a true amniote. Therefore, there is no clearly identified common ancestor of amniotes, and it is uncertain if such a name will ever be determined. During the Permian period, two main branches of amniotes evolved, synapsids and sauropsids. Synapsids evolved towards mammals, which are the ancestors of humans. During this time, the synapsids included the development of pelycosaurs and therapsids. Pelycosaurs are the direct ancestors of mammals. Sauropsids evolved towards reptiles. From sauropsids, two new branches of reptiles developed, anapsids and diapsids, which later evolved into other reptiles, including turtles, snakes, lizards, crocodiles, dinosaurs, and birds.